sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed even to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." And the rich man said, "Then I beg you, Father, to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." And Abraham said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced if someone rises from the dead." This parable really moved me because my eye is now crying. Whenever a parable, now remember this, oh gosh, this is really bad right now. Remember, parables are stories to teach us, but there's a range of interpretation. A lot of it is just simply what we get out of it. So one of the things we want to do is to think about, what did Jesus' original hearers hear in these parables? So whenever a story started, there once was a rich man. Jesus' original hearers knew that the rich man was not the hero, that the rich man was not going to be the role model. So they're ready for what is to come. There once was a rich man, and they're like, oh, the rich man. And sure enough, their expectations are met. We have a rich man who dressed in purple, and you may know that purple, biblically, is one of the most expensive fabrics. The priestly robes in the temple were made out of purple. And in the New Testament, we have a wealthy businesswoman who sold purple cloth. So he dressed in purple and fine linen, and he feasted sumptuously every day. Now, this word for feasting is not just a word for eating. It's not a word for, oh, he had nice meals every day. It's actually a word that also means cheering and rejoicing like at a major festival. So the word connotes not just everyday meals, but it's like it's a massive banquet party, like a wedding feast or a high holiday. That's how the rich man ate every day. So what do the hearers think about the rich man? Ooh, boo. To Jesus' hearers, he was not one of us. We're not identifying with him. And because it's a parable, it is kind of a caricature, right? The rich man that, feasts sumptuously every day. Well, verse 20 says, "At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered in sores." Now, the English translators have moved the sentence around to make it flow better. But ours start with "at the gate." The original Greek starts with the poor man named Lazarus. So the location, in other words, is the secondary thing. Lazarus is the feature of the sentence. And we have to note that in no other parable does anyone have a name. There's no, in the stories, it's just a poor man or a rich man or the Samaritan or the priest, right? In this parable, the poor man has a name. His name is Lazarus, which translated into Hebrew means God helps. Lazarus is called, let's see, is he called a beggar? Some translations, ours doesn't, the New Revised Standard, some translations call him a beggar. But the word here is not beggar. The word is simply poor. There's many, many poor people in the Bible who were not beggars. And what we need to note is that Lazarus was past being able to beg. Begging was actually a profession. People who were called beggars, that was their deal. They had a location, that's how they supported their families, they were poor and they begged, and that's how they made their ends meet. Lazarus was too far gone to be a beggar. So, at the gate lay a man. The word lay connotes someone put him there. Like someone carried him to the rich man's gate and laid him down because he couldn't get there himself. And we're not sure why. We could surmise that they put him at a rich man's gate, thinking that the rich man and his rich friends coming and going would be able to help him, even though he was really too sick to beg anymore. So our original hearers, just as the rich man was not one of us, Lazarus is not one of us. They don't identify with Lazarus because he is so far down the economic ladder. But they do have sympathy for him. They have sympathy for him. And the fact that we are given a name, this is what it tells us. Lazarus is not just some guy at the gate. He has a name. It's Lazarus at the gate. And we're meant to take that seriously. So we have Lazarus at the gate. The dogs come and lick his sores. And my initial reaction was like, oh, like, is the point of the parable to gross us out? And then in the commentary, it's like, no, actually, Jesus' hearers would have realized the dogs were giving him comfort. The dogs were giving him a comfort that the rich man up the hill was not giving. And dog saliva was known to have healing antiseptic properties. So this image of the dogs, it's like the dogs are caring for him, but people are not caring for him. So, the poor man dies and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. We all know Abraham from the book of Genesis. Abraham, the father, really, of all religions. And the rich man died and was buried. And in Hades, that's the Greek word for hell, the rich man was being tormented, and he looks up and he sees Abraham with Lazarus by his side. Now, this is so interesting because our translation completely omits it. The actual language is the bosom of Abraham. Isn't there an old song, rock me in the bosom of Abraham? Oh, my thing is starting to do that weird thing. So, the literal translation, he was carried away to the bosom of Abraham. And I don't know why these translators watered this down. Because that word, the bosom, it connotes intimacy, family, like the phrase, the bosom of the family, right? The heart of the family. That's where that's where Lazarus was, welcomed in, intimate, close. At the Last Supper, there's a reference. We know that they reclined to eat. They had cushions, and that John was reclining with his head on Jesus' chest, like bosom. So this intimate image of eating and feasting and closeness, that's where Lazarus was. And so the rich man sees this and is incensed by it. servant whose purpose is to serve the rich guy. Even in Hades, the rich guy is all about him. He's this truly self-indulgent individual. Now, what we know in the Bible is that wealth is not bad. It is not sinful to have money. Nothing in the scriptures teaches that. There's stuff about money leading to sin, but simply having wealth is not sinful. And the point of this rich man, he's the negative example. He sins by omission. His sin isn't that he has money. His sin is that he fails to act with what he has been given. In the Bible, in the first century, giving alms, when you see the word alms, it's different than tithing and offering. Alms is meant specifically for the poor. And the root word of the word alm is the same as the root word for righteousness. So there's this connection between giving and generosity and being righteous. And in the Bible, being righteous means, we've coined the phrase right with God, but that's kind of what it means. Being righteous means we are right with God. We're living a life worthy of the calling of kindness and generosity and forgiveness. That's what righteousness is. So the rich man was none of these things. And even in Hades, he wants Lazarus to wait on him. And he's told by Abraham, no, I'm sorry, there's actually a chasm there. Nobody can cross. So the gate that separated Lazarus from the rich man, the gate has become a chasm, and they are eternally separated. So then the rich man starts to panic. And he's like, I gotta warn my family. I gotta warn my rich family. Because they're feasting and wearing purple, and I need them to know. And so he asks if, it's interesting, he doesn't ask if he can go warn them. He's still treating Lazarus like the servant boy. Can you send Lazarus to warn my family? Note, still, the rich man does not care about the poor that he has ignored. His only concern is for his rich family. He wants to save his family from the fires of Hades. He still has absolutely no concern about giving alms and for the poor and needy in the land. So, I'm sorry, my eye has me slightly discombobulated. So what we have is a situation where Jesus' original hearers fully understood. The rich man refused to give alms, even with the poor man sitting at his gate. And those original first century hearers would have thought, well, of course he would suffer in the afterlife. This is no surprise to them. Jesus' audience knew this. They would not have been on the side of the rich man or regarded his wealth as righteousness, and they would not have been surprised at his fate. And what we find Abraham telling him is that your family has the Torah. They have the commandments and the prophets. And if you know the prophets are all about caring for the poor people. In fact, caring for the poor is mentioned 600 times in the Bible. It is a major theme. So, we have exactly what we need to live righteous lives. If you've got a Bible, you know what it means to live a righteous life. And that was Abraham's message to the rich man. They should know. They should already know what they need to do. No one is coming back from the dead to tell them. It's okay to have wealth. It's not okay to be self-indulgent with what we have given and to not be generous. That's the point of the parable. So we know this, and I don't want to just sound cliche what we know is that simply by the fact we're sitting in this room, compared to the world, we have wealth, right? We have wealth and privilege. We might very well be looked upon. I don't know, is rayon like purple? I don't know. But we have more than enough that we need to live and be well. So what's before us in this parable is to look at our self-indulgence and how we are being generous. Last week, Kirk Yeager was here, and boy, he's having a rough time. You know, he might need both shoulders replaced. And life, it's just been hard. He's had a really rough few years. But he told me after church, he says, you know, I just want to tell you, there's a homeless guy that lives not too far from me, and I got the feeling it was, I don't know if it was in a park or somewhere within walking distance of his house. Do you know what Kirk does? Kirk takes him water every day. It's like, seriously, it's like Lazarus at the gate, except Kirk doesn't just walk by. Kirk every day takes this guy water and chats with him. He said the other day he sat with him and just talked for a couple of hours. So do you know the power of looking a homeless person in the face and knowing their name and treating them like a person? That's the kind of generosity Kirk is living out every day. I read about this couple. Their names are Julia Wise and Jeff Kaufman. Julie is a social worker, and Jeff is a computer programmer. And they have two little kids, a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And the past decade, this young couple have donated half their income to charity, a total of $585,000. This young family has given away, and this is what they said: we have what we need. It just makes sense to share with people. And we hope that our daughters will grow up thinking this is a normal part of life. Generosity, as opposed to self-indulgence. Another story is about a paper guy. Greg Daly has a paper route in New Jersey. And during the peak of the pandemic, one of the elderly people that he delivered papers to asked him if he could drive up into her driveway and put the paper on her porch, because she was finding it so hard to get down and even get her paper down in the driveway. And it's like a light came on for him. He thought, if she's having this much trouble just going down the driveway to get her paper, how on earth is she getting her essentials? Whether they're being delivered and dropped on the driveway or what. So this is what Greg did. He wrote a little note with his next delivery, and with every newspaper, his note said, "My name is Greg Daly, and I deliver your paper. I would like to offer my services free of charge to anyone who needs groceries." He started delivering groceries to over 100 elderly people on his paper route during the pandemic. There are so many ways for us to be generous, to not be self-indulgent, but to give of what we have, whether it's one person or a group of people, or whether it's with our money. This morning, why don't you go get Alex, Francis? I want Alex in here for the kids to help. This morning, I'm asking you to be generous with your church. You know, we've been talking now for quite a few years about how we have lived a full life cycle. And the pandemic, boy, that hurried the curve, didn't it? And we have a number of folks who are just not leaving their homes anymore. And we are on the cusp of starting a new cycle. 6 pandemic babies, right? And I was wondering where our families are. I think our families are sick today. We had 9 kids signed up just to be at lunch, and they're not here. So I'm to turn that curve and start a new life cycle. We're looking at this innovative idea of maybe sharing staff with another church. And what our session wants is to move into this next year financially strong. What you bring to the table right now is absolutely critical for this next phase in our church's life. So when Mark sits down with the finance guys from Grace, right, and opens up our books, we want to be able to say, look at what we have to bring to the table to help this incredible idea come to pass. So you may have brought a card with you today, or maybe you filled it out in worship. And Linda, why don't you just start playing? We're going to get some mood music. And I want to give you a minute to look at that pledge. Maybe you wrote down the same number you gave this past year. So I want you to ask, can I do a little more to help my church enter this future? Can you do $5 more? Can you do 50 more? Can you do 100 more? Take a minute and, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have cards. They are in the back.
I'll go get them.
Thank you.